Last year, we saw Tomb Raider 1-3 Remastered, which reintroduced gamers to the beginnings of Lara Croft as the globe-trotting Tomb Raider. The initial release of this trilogy really set the bar for 3D action-adventure games back in the day, and while the Remastered was actually far from perfect, it did enough to make these classics more accessible to modern players. A year later, we now get the next 3 games in the series with Tomb Raider 4-6 Remastered. Although I wouldn't say these releases hold the same nostalgia that the original 3 did, so let's dive in and unpack that.
The initial discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, and...
This is Howard Carter's original exclusive, but yesterday morning, from our Egyptian correspondent, we received this.
Tutankhamun's tomb.
Tomb Raider 4-6 Remastered is pretty similar in quality and build to the work done in the previous trilogy, offering the same features and enhancements. Players can choose between modern and classic controls, and with the flick of a button, they can switch between modern and classic visuals. The modern control scheme is slightly more intuitive, but fans of the original setup will still feel right at home here. The games remain very much playable with all their original quirks intact, though the remastered graphics do suffer from the same issue as before, with the jarring inconsistency in how lighting effects are applied. Areas are often darker than they should be, especially in 4 and 5, so you may have to just randomly switch visuals frequently just to navigate the stages sometimes. Like the previous collection, you're only getting the remastered games here with not much else in terms of extras. So once again, it's a missed opportunity to include development materials and developer insights. The best game in this set is undoubtedly the one that actually opens the collection, the 4th Tomb Raider release. In fact, I'd go as far to say as it would make more sense in the previous trilogy and make that a quadrilogy, since this is how the releases were originally intended. Tomb Raider: The Last Revelation was meant to mark the end of an era, the final chapter on that hardware before the development team planned to reboot Lara Croft and the franchise as a whole. The Last Revelation brings together all the ideas from its predecessors, situating established play mechanics and gameplay conventions into one epic design. Set in the heart of Egypt, Lara explores ancient tombs with puzzles and level designs that many still consider the strongest in the series. In fact, it's often hailed as one of the best in the 32-bit era. The collection does justice to the original graphical style for the most part, marred only by inconsistent lighting, but at least there was some artistic attention that was put into the presentation. However, the remade graphics do have a little bit of soullessness to them and lack the original's charm. As you're playing, it just feels like a lazy coat of paint was put on it, and even Lara's character model looks strangely uncanny in most moments. Okay, but stepping away from the high point of The Last Revelation, the 5th release, Tomb Raider Chronicles, was critically panned on release and felt rather anticlimactic. That said, I guess it's still welcome in this collection, as otherwise it might have been lost and forgotten. Chronicles doesn't reinvent the wheel in terms of level design or gameplay. In fact, by this point, the gaming world was pretty much burnt out on Lara Croft and Tomb Raider as a whole. Still, there are some charming moments in this adventure. It functions more like a tribute to Lara's past exploits than anything else, but it's clear it was time to give up the ghost. The 6th entry in this series is pretty interesting. Unlike its predecessors, Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness marked the franchise's next-gen debut on PlayStation 2. The hype was real, but after much anticipation and many delays, the game launched to poor critical and player reception. It felt dated and sluggish even at the time of its release, especially since PS2 owners had already experienced innovative titles like Devil May Cry and Metal Gear Solid 2. Angel of Darkness was intended to start a new trilogy of sorts, but it's one that never materialized. Its strongest points were its dark storyline and atmospheric music. And sure, the remastered version does a decent job of retaining the PS2 original's look and feel, with some enhancements to improve the texture mapping. However, Angel of Darkness not only falls short as a next-gen reboot for the franchise, it also proves to be the most boring iteration of the classic Tomb Raider formula, primarily thanks to its sluggish gameplay mechanics. While the locations and general atmosphere are indeed interesting, the level design feels linear and uninspired. On a technical front, performance runs fairly smooth across all 3 remastered titles, but it doesn't overshadow the fact that these games were designed with older hardware in mind. Veterans may appreciate the nostalgia, while newcomers could find the dated mechanics less appealing, especially compared to modern action-adventure releases. Tomb Raider 4-6 Remastered definitely focuses on the weaker entries in the classic era, though Tomb Raider: The Last Revelation still stands out as a worthwhile experience. The other two games remain among the weakest in the franchise, but at least they're preserved for fans who want a complete collection. Much like the previous remastered anthology, this one feels serviceable at best. So it's probably wise to wait for a sale unless you're a die-hard fan of Lara Croft's early adventures. Noisy Pixel is giving Tomb Raider 4-6 Remastered a 6 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.